Good evening and welcome to Embracing Diversity. Tonight, we will explore the topic of breaking the school to prison pipeline, and we have a wonderful discussion here for you. We will have two people that are co-moderating tonight: law school graduate and current minister, Reverend Vicki Hughes, JD, and Mrs. Lorna Brown Ray, formerly a corrections officer, also at times holding other positions within the adult prison system. Once a social worker in the juvenile justice system, and now is a current educator in North Carolina public schools. Reverend Hughes, who is our host and moderator, will introduce our dialogue for tonight.
Good evening. This is Embracing Diversity, and this is an ongoing bi-weekly Wednesdays online diversity initiative. Our tagline is "Our uniqueness always matters." There were originally 8 panelists when we began on June 17th. I'm the founder, host, moderator. Since June, we have invited guest panelists to join us based on our dialogue topics. We pride ourselves in having an ongoing online dialogue where we think about diverse representation, racial reconciliatory efforts, social justice, and equal rights, and these things all meet in the middle. We discuss a wide array of pressing current events and pertinent societal ills and issues. So here we are. Tonight is our 9th live streamed dialogue, and my event specialist told you the topic. Let me repeat it one more time so it's fresh in your mind: school to prison pipeline, strategies for prison reform. You'll learn about this pipeline I just referred to, preventative strategies in schools, prison reform, and re-entry strategies for ex-offenders. We want a lot of people to listen tonight. We want parents listening tonight because we will be talking about schools K through 12. So please, if you would right now, share this Facebook Live on your Facebook pages. The school to prison pipeline is a process through which students are pushed out of schools and into prisons. It's a process of criminalizing youth that is carried out by disciplinary policies and practices within different schools that put students in contact with law enforcement, unwillingly, of course. Zero tolerance and other harsh discipline policies are implemented that impose suspensions, expulsions, and arrests. These things increase the likelihood that students will drop out of school, and that increases the chances that certain students will face jail or prison time later in life. Studies show that students of color, male and female, students with disabilities, and LGBTQ students are the students most affected through this school to prison pipeline. Their behaviors may be the same as other students, but they receive different treatment and harsher punishments. You know, decades ago, kids were sent to the principal's office and/or they faced detention as disciplinary measures. But now, in this time in history, there is the threat of suspension, expulsion, and/or arrest. Now, we have so many kids, numerous kids, millions of kids who, end up getting suspended or expelled in the U.S. from their schools due to harsh punishments through zero tolerance policies for minor behavioral issues, some as simple as talking back to the teacher or using profanity. Not that those things are correct behaviors, but they are minor things compared to some other things that students can get into. Some kids are arrested at their schools and humiliated in front of their friends and peers. One thing I want to mention is Black and Latino students are twice or more likely to drop out of school than their white peers. It's harder for dropouts to find gainful employment and typically earn less once they do find work. So that's a brief intro of some things we'll be talking about tonight. We have a lot to talk about this evening for the next hour and a half. Well, actually now about an hour and 15 minutes. We will be ending promptly at 9 p.m. so that those who want to, those on this line and viewers can watch the Vice President debate at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to, for a few minutes, turn this dialogue over to my co-moderator, Ms. Lorna Brown-Ray, and she's going to add some points about the school to prison pipeline, and then she will pose a question to our guests to get us started. Lorna? Lorna, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I was muted. I didn't realize it. Gotta love Zoom. Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me loud and clear now.
Yes.
Okay, great. As Reverend Hughes just shared with us, the school to prison pipeline is real. It is a real problem. What we're finding is that minorities and other disenfranchised or protected populations are disciplined more often in school, have more contact with law enforcement at younger ages than their white counterparts. And that's a problem. What we're going to explore tonight, we can certainly share some of our experiences seeing these instances in real life, but we also want to explore some solutions along the lines of awareness and along the lines of correcting these problems. So the question that I want to pose to you guys is, if anyone would like to share an experience that you've had with a child in the school system or as a client of yours in counseling or in the legal field, whether your own or in your profession, where you've seen that they might have been fallen victim of our topic tonight, over-disciplined, disciplined at a younger age, or disciplined more strict than their white counterpart would have been.
Anybody want to respond to her question?
I can.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pastor Michael Clee. I am here in the lovely city of Janesville, North Carolina, down near the Outer Banks, and have been working with this type of work, felony reenfranchisement, returning citizen reentry, and prison reform for quite some years. I'm a ordained minister and an environmental engineer by trade, but I've always really had a pull and a draw to this this type of work, a lot of it experiencing it firsthand. So I have one of the most tragic stories that I've seen is a young lady that I knew firsthand, found herself at a place where she's in her last year of high school. She's not an academic scholar, but she's doing well. She's passed entrance exams for college and is preparing to graduate with a B average, but she's still in a little bit of a rebellious phase, and she's she's large. She's kind of larger than most of the teachers that would be teaching her, or a lot of the people that she would come into contact with within the school system in the neighborhood that she lived in. And long and short, just a average day that, she found herself in a place where she wasn't doing something that she probably should have, cut school on a particular day, and ended up, instead of just being a discipline referral, instead of just being a write-up, instead of even just being a day out of school, it essentially ruined her life. She ended up being arrested and charged, and because of the area where she was, truancy officers, long and short, pulled up in the neighborhood and just so happened to quote unquote find some illegal substances on the ground, and because they were there for her and nobody claimed it, they arrested her for truancy, and not just cutting school, but truancy, and then gave her a drug charge as well. And so there goes college, there goes, and again, this young lady was passing through the park, not involved in the activity at all, I know of certainty. And because it was police involvement rather than just a disciplinary action, it escalated very quickly, and she has never attended college. She's never found herself in a place where she's been able to hold a stable job. She's been fighting an uphill battle her entire adult life, simply because of a disciplinary action from school that led to police involvement. And it is frightening how quickly these things can escalate, how frustrating they can be. And when I attempted, as a local pastor at the time, to intervene on the young lady's behalf, and talk to the officers that were involved, talk to the school, the police's idea of assisting in the efforts was that, well, if she can work off the offenses and she can be an informant for us, and she worked for us for a number of years, and then we'll dismiss the charges, but not until then, and so on and so forth. And so in the effort to get her some assistance, get an attorney, so on and so forth, she fell victim to pretty much coercion into a plea deal, just to get it out of the way so she could get on with her life, not understanding and realizing that accepting this offer of, hey, you can move on, just do this and it'll be over. Accepting that essentially meant that her opportunities for many of her options for gainful employment were over. Her opportunities for many of her options for being able to receive college funding, a lot of other things were just forfeited because they coerced her into just sign this and you can go home.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that story, Reverend Clee. I think I missed, how old was the young lady? How old is she now?
She was 17 at the time. She is 31 now. 31 now.
Wow.
Yes.
That is so unfortunate.
Let me ask this question. And her assertion was that the drugs were not hers?
Yes, they were absolutely not hers. She lived in a neighborhood where the park had drug activity. She's a teenage girl that likes teenage boys, so she's cutting through the park, getting attention from young guys. But truancy officer comes up when you're somebody that's not familiar with what to do, because you're not a criminal. She didn't exactly know what to do when the police, pulled up on them in that fashion. So pretty much everybody ran, and she's, just kind of there, stunned and confused. And whatever they found, they charged her with. And, no evidence whatsoever And again, I know this young lady very well firsthand. She had no involvement in that type of activity. I can guarantee of a certainty. But if someone, if everybody else runs and what they threw on the ground is there when they come to grab you up, that officer had a choice to make. And instead of choosing to be reasonably objective and saying, okay, we're here to see why you're not in school, they chose to say, okay, you know, you're 17 years old and you're already bigger and taller than me as a grown police officer. So I'm not taking any chances with you. I'm manhandling you, I'm cuffing you, roughhousing you, and then to make you know that I'm in charge, and then any resistance was met with force. And because she didn't just immediately be quiet, whatever they could charge her with, they did.
Hmm.
And it's an unfortunate situation, but it absolutely took place. And there are things that could have transpired. They could have tested or fingerprinted the packaging that the narcotics were in and found out that she had never touched it or never had any part of it. They could have tested her hands for any type of residue. They could have, looked at, it's a neighborhood park that I'm sure that there's local street cameras that would have shown that she had just arrived in the park. None of that due diligence or investigation was done. She was pretty much coerced into pleading guilty to something that she had nothing to do with, just to get it to go away. And it never goes away. She's continued to fight being in the system her entire adult life.
Hmm.
And that's why we're here, because that's not the only story in the system. Anyone else care to share?
Yes, we have 3 people who have joined us since you posed the question. So
My name is Attorney David Dupree. I'm here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm a double graduate of Howard University. Undergrad was in business administration, accounting was my focus, and computer information systems at a double major. Then I went on to law school at Howard and been practicing law since then. And so one of the things that I've done is I practice criminal law partially. And one of the things I didn't share with Reverend Hughes is that also as part of my practice, I have at least 32 years under my belt experience in dealing with children in the what we call the abuse and neglect system, or in Tennessee they call it dependency and neglect system, or what we call children in need of supervision. And so you have that whole big spectrum that is a tremendous feeder to the prison pipeline, which is actually a shame. I'll just give you a couple of quick examples, if I can.
yes, go ahead.
Well, part of my practice, 20 years I practiced in DC before moving to Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee. And so I've seen so many cases in DC where you have child after child in the system that either for whatever reason, it might be from on the juvenile side where there's a juvenile criminal activity, or there might be on the other side where there has been some abuse and neglect, or whatever the case may be from the parent, or the child is in just plain old unruly and in need of supervision. Either way, they get attached to the system. And unless certain things are put in place, unless the child is really evaluated, unless the work is done to find out what is making this child tick, what is making this child perform to such a standard that they are having so many brushes early with the prison system, then how can they ever come out of it? And what we find out is that they don't put into things, because it costs too much a lot of times to get them a psychological or to get a psychiatric evaluation, and they don't want to put out the money. They don't want to pay for the professionals to do those things, and so we end up with situations where they don't get the proper determination as to what's going on, and end up being brushed with the system. One of the worst cases I remember in DC was a child that was 8 years old who was brought in and charged with assault with a deadly weapon. And the deadly weapon was he went upside a kid's head at school with a ceramic bird. He just hit him with the bird. And so, whatever reason, he was mad and he took the bird and hit him. So now, because of that, he's attached to the prison system as a juvenile at 8 years old for assault with a deadly weapon. And so from there, it's like, well, are we going to get him the right help? And unfortunately, in that situation, I represented one of the parents. I didn't represent the child. And so I didn't get to have the hands-on experience with the child to see if there was something that I could do to help pull him out of the spiraling system. And unfortunately, he did spiral. Another situation here in Knoxville happened just a few years ago, where there was a situation where I represented a juvenile who was 17, right at 17 years old, but it had a couple of brushes with the system already. And he was in a situation where he was with some guys, allegedly, and allegedly got caught, with some stuff. And because there was a gun in the car, he got charged with some bad stuff. Well, God bless his mother's heart and his family's heart. They were so heartbroken because he had had other brushes with the juvenile system that they wouldn't let him out. And he wanted to go home. His folks wanted him to go home. And they wanted him to go home so bad that they heard about this deal that was being struck, possibly being struck with the prosecution. The prosecution said, well, hey, if he transfers over to the adult system, we'll give him, let him go on his personal recognizance, and we'll give him this kind of deal. Whereas if he stayed in the juvenile system, he wouldn't be able to go home, but they can't hold him no longer than 19. So there's no way that he would have been able to be in long. He would be able to get out after he finished his time, but his family wanted him home so bad that they made him take the deal. And of course, being representing the person as the attorney for him, I had to do what he wanted. And so I had to allow that to happen, that he got turned over to the adult system. And sure enough, he did come out, and sure enough, they did strike him a decent deal. But sure enough, as things would go, within a couple of months, he was back in court for a violation of his release conditions. And sure enough, they got him enough stuff on him to put him away for a good little while, which is what they wanted in the first place. They wanted him off the street. And they knew that if they coerced him into taking this deal, because his family wanted him home so bad, and that you're doing such a bad job because you want him to stay in there, it's like you get caught in trying to do what you know is going to help him in the long run, and doing, of course, what he wants. As of course, my oath says I had to do what he wants because he's the client. But, in my heart of hearts, I knew that if he stayed, we might be able to get him the right exams, get him the right professional help that he needed to find out what was going on within him, to get him other stuff, medication management, and possibly get him trained in a good trade or something like that. or to see if he would be, able to be college material if he had the right education. He thought he would, I thought he would, but he won't get that chance right now because he is part of the adult criminal system. And not only that, they send him to the other side of the state, far away from his family. So it's just tragic.
That's horrible. Could we hear from the former attorney who is now an educator?
Yeah,
I'd like her to
sure.
respond. I see
Yeah.
her shaking her head. And
Yeah, definitely. Good evening. My name is Valicia Allen. I'm the founder and executive director of Leadership Preparatory Charter School. We're a small single-site public charter school here in Memphis, Tennessee. Prior to serving in that capacity, I worked as a public defender for 6 years, and then also worked 2 years as a civil attorney. And I've witnessed this as an attorney as it relates to many of the students that I represented, from a student getting into a fight with another student and hurting that student by accident and then being arrested for it, and being offered something like deferred prosecution, but understanding that many of our students come from low-income households. And so the ability to pay for that deferred prosecution program is often a hindrance in keeping them out of the system and having something on their record. But I've also witnessed it from the process of founding and operating an elementary school in the beginning process of it, right? I think we never talk about the beginning process of how that school to prison pipeline starts. And it starts as young as elementary school, when in many of these schools you have not just a suspension piece. I think we always focus on the suspension piece, but we need to also start looking at the classroom setting. The fact that many of our schools are not setting our students up for success. So many of the clients that I served as a public defender couldn't read. And so a lot of the reasons why they were in the criminal justice system and had to do things to survive was because they came from failing schools. And so it's not just the suspension piece, it's also the fact that we're failing to produce literate folks of color. Many of our students are in schools with teachers as well as admins that are not engaged in really the building of them as human beings. They're not strong academic programs. And so you and I both know, who would we be if we couldn't read? We definitely wouldn't be sitting here right now, right? I definitely wouldn't be a former attorney of founding a school had it not been for, if I think of two very strong teachers that really told me, look, you're smart, you can do this. Because I'm the product of a single parent home. My father was around, but he was not in the house with us. My mother worked very hard. My father worked very hard. I'm a first generation college graduate. And so I think we also, when we talk about the prison, the school to prison pipeline, it's not just within the suspension piece. It's also within the academic programs of these schools and what they're turning out. And that's what kind of parlayed me into the academic field, because I felt like as a public defender, a criminal defense attorney, I was just poking holes in a wall that really needed to be torn down. And it was, in fact, one of my clients, after getting him off on something, had a big trial, got him off. He was innocent. He was back in. And I remember on something else. And I remember having a conversation with him about, like, what is going on? Why do we keep going through this same thing? And he looked at me in the most sincere way. And he said, you know, Miss Allen, like, I appreciate your whole, like, I have a dream, I can do anything I want to do speech. But someone should have told me that in kindergarten. Someone should have told me that before I'm now 18. I can't read well. I can't really do math, but I know how to count this money. Someone should have told me that then. And it was then that I decided to then transition into education and, in fact, found a school so that I could tell someone that in kindergarten. And so I think we have to also talk about that piece in terms of the failing schools.
I want to follow up with what Valicia said. How you doing? So I am an assistant professor. I'm sorry, Dr. Tiffany Hollis. I'm an assistant professor at Coastal Carolina University. Former K-12 educator, all subjects, particularly worked with young men and women with emotional and behavioral disabilities and mental health issues. So the reason I got into education and worked with that population is because I had those school experiences that Ms. Allen was just speaking of, where you were pretty much suspended or sanctioned, disciplinary sanctions were imposed upon you for your actions that you did in class. Of course, I was a parentified sibling, so I was the one who had the authority, and who a lot of things I did in school, the teachers would say it was me being sassy, but it was kind of me knowing how to do what I needed to do as far as surviving, thriving, making ends meet, doing things that I knew worked for me, basically. And so I was what you call twice exceptional. So I was gifted and talented, but I also was EBD or BED as they called it back then. They've switched the letters and changed it up now. But a lot of people just said I was BAD, right? But a lot of it came from a very tough childhood that I had. I had a lot of adverse circumstances, situations, trauma that never really got to the root of things, because it was way back when, before all this trauma-informed, trauma-responsive, before all the wraparound services, before all of that. And I came from a mother-centered household. I say mother-centered because literally it was a single parent household, but it was my mother who was the center of everything, the foundation, the rock. And so I say that because it's more positive in terms of the wording, but also because that's really what it was. And so for me, a lot of my behavior came from a lot of things that I was seeing and or experiencing at home. And so I got suspended a lot from school. I even went before the school board facing expulsion, but I went to a middle school where I had a Black principal and a Black guidance counselor who came with me to that hearing, and they looked at the judge and told them, they looked at the school board members and the judge and told them, if you let us take her under our wing, you won't see her ever again. And that's literally what these two women did. They became very influential in a lot of the things that I did. Again, I was like that young man, not having that hope, not having that person say, you can, you can, you can. And when these two women who were complete strangers, who only knew me because I was attending their school, took that vested interest in me, I said, oh, well, okay, then this means that I am somebody, I can do something. So then a lot of the teachers who were always already hearing about me and saying, oh, she's going to be a piece of work, she's going to be tough, she's got a mouth on her, all these things. Because of the interventions that these two young ladies got me involved in and did some things with me, helped me change my whole life around. A lot of those teachers didn't even get the chance to meet that girl that they thought was coming to their classrooms. They were ready for me. They were already saying what I wasn't going to do, what I couldn't do, who I couldn't be, what I shouldn't do. And so I defied all that. And so because of them, I ended up becoming an educator where I worked with children in a therapeutic setting and in children with behavioral and emotional issues. And I said, if they could do it for me, I can do it for these children. Domino effect. It was a mission for me. It became a life's calling for me. I still do it now. And so I began working with a lot of young men, a lot of young women with these records in second grade. I had a second grader who had a police record. He had 3 charges. He had about 8 people. When we had meetings, he had 8 people around the table at the meetings. 2 of those people were probation officers for 2 different charges. So that young man now, that was second grade. He's a senior now in high school who I've kept up with, who has done amazing things. He's getting ready to graduate in May. He's in Charlotte, North Carolina now. But again, it's just that thing of the school was failing him. And he needed that one stable adult who would hold other adults accountable and say, I'm not going to let you railroad this young man. I'm not going to let you do this, because I saw it done to me. And so I decided to make sure that I continue to advocate. And so even now in my current role, I'm a professor, but I teach teachers how to work with students with emotional and behavioral disabilities and also with mental health issues, and try to help them kind of become a support for them, but build relationships and be non-judgmental and leave their biases at the door, because that's what happens too. A lot of teachers come in with their biases and they have the power of the pen, as we say, so they can refer these children, they can write them up, they can send them out. And so a lot of times without getting to know the students, they just automatically refer them, send them out. They don't get to know the culture they bring with them to school. They don't get to know who they are as a person. They don't even use those affirmative words with them saying, you can be somebody. You are, you know, the whole sense of caring that Ms. Allen was talking about, that's not in a lot of our schools. A lot of our schools are no longer student-centered. They're focused on test scores or meeting the norms of society and what we should do in order to get this funding. And they get more money if a child is referred for special education. So a lot of times they go that route. I'm just gonna say that a lot. And I tell my students all the time, your job is to work yourself out of a job. I know you're a special education teacher. I know that you work with students who have emotional behavior disabilities, but your job is to advocate for that child and to ensure that he or she is no longer on that trajectory to enter that prison pipeline. I also tell them, because sometimes you have students who are on medication. As Mr. Dupree was saying, I had a young man who was on medication, but once we got him into wrestling, football, basketball, doing things that we knew would help him kinesthetically and would help with some of his neurons and some of his neurological synapses, it helped tremendously. The behavior decreased. We even started doing yoga and mindfulness with him. And this was years ago before they started doing all the social emotional learning now. Like, this was years ago. And I knew if it worked then years ago, it can work now. So there are a lot of young men and women in the schools who, again, are being failed, as Ms. Allen said. And again, the school to prison pipeline begins as early as preschool. There's also the preschool to prison pipeline. You have young men ages 4 and 5 who are kicked out of preschool, kicked out of kindergarten, all because of something, all because the teacher is scared of them. They're seen as a threat. How? Developmentally, as a 3, 4, and 5-year-old, how are you seen as a threat? Right? So we also have to consider those things too. The teacher's biases, and then also just how teachers perceive a lot of our Black and brown children, because that's disproportionately who are in the system, our Black and brown youth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tiffany, Dr. Hollis. I was trying to talk earlier and I was muted. So I just wanted to say, before I call on Stephanie Davis, who is a school counselor, a licensed professional counselor, I just wanted to mention, when I was in seminary, I was a substitute teacher, and I saw, sometimes I was a substitute teacher, but then there were days when I was called to be a teacher, teaching assistant. So I was in the classroom with some of these teachers, and there were a few instances where I would see how these young teachers usually would be responding to the minority children differently, disciplining them differently. I witnessed it. I think of one young boy in particular. I saw him in kindergarten as a sub in his class, and then when he got to first grade, I was a teaching assistant under this young white teacher. He was in first grade, and he couldn't find his assignment that they were about to go over. He was the only student in the class who couldn't find it, and the teacher stormed over, dumped over his desk, and he had to, he was humiliated in front of all the other students. And this student had to, pick up his things, try to find his assignment. Me being a Black woman, went over and I helped him. I talked to him, and during our short conversation, I found out that he was having problems at home, but he eventually found his homework that they were about to go over. All these students were waiting on him, and the teacher was just fuming. So, he found his work. I helped organize his desk while they were going over this assignment, and that kid read better than the other students. And, he had obviously done his work the day before, and he knew that, he participated in this assignment. That really ticked me off. So I just wanted to mention that. I saw it firsthand, and I just gave you an example. That was a young Black boy in first grade who had some problems in kindergarten. And it's like the teacher already had formed this negative opinion of him and decided he was a problem. And he was definitely headed down this school to prison pipeline. So Stephanie Davis, would you tell us, if you would like to just briefly tell us who you are, and if just continue on with some of the solutions to this school to prison pipeline issue?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Davis. I am a school counselor, but I'm also a licensed clinical mental health counselor as well. And I have to say hello to my friend, Ms. Hollis. I jumped on when I got on. I'm kind of scanning the room, and I was like, hey, I know her. So Tiffany and I both came from the same school, the school system, Cabarrus County, and we were doing the same job. So it was really neat though, because she was with elementary and I had middle. And so we would always kind of collaborate, and her students would transition into my classroom. So we actually share a lot of similar experiences and probably, you know, the same students. So I think my kind of input into this discussion is more about building those relationships. We already know, just based on statistics alone and our personal experience, that students of color, yes, they are disciplined more often. We actually had something in our school where when the state reviewed our discipline record, we were flagged because we were told that we had one of the highest rates of discipline, including kids being expelled from school across the state. And so their solution to that was, okay, we just won't suspend kids of color. And it was like, okay, wait a minute. So at some point in time, discipline is realistic. It's realistic to discipline a child for, you know, negative behavior. So you can't just say, well, we're not going to discipline them without like, okay, what's the plan? If we don't discipline them, what's the plan? So I do believe in building those relationships, and that's how we keep kids in the classroom. So one thing that we did before, I like I said before, I taught for 15 years in that self-contained classroom. So one thing that we did a lot was a concept called restorative practices. With restorative practices, it means, hey, yeah, I messed up. I'm sorry. Okay, well, how will we fix this? So in essence, there's still that pool of discipline, because let's say I have a client that I'm working with, and he got upset, and he pushed his dresser and the TV broke. Well, he didn't do it on purpose. That was his thing. I didn't break the TV on purpose. And I said, I understand you didn't break the TV on purpose, but because you pushed on the dresser drawer, the TV fell, and now the TV's broken. How can we fix this? And that's the same thing in the classroom. Something happens, I have, you know, an outburst. Do I need to be sent home for that? No. Do I need to all of a sudden have this record that's going to follow me? No. How do I fix it? I fix it by apologizing. If that means I apologize to just one person or to the class as a whole, I'm going to apologize. And then we're going to figure out, how do we fix this? So I do believe in relationships. We have to build those relationships. We have to build positive rapport. Without those things, we will continue to have issues. And that's students in general, not just students of color. So yeah, I do believe that we have to make more of an effort to build these relationships and get to know our students, not just for the time that they're in our classroom, but what's happening in your world around you. All those things have such a dramatic impact on what is presented to us in the classroom. A kid can come to school and they're hungry. If I don't know you're hungry, I know when I'm hungry, I'm not very nice, you know? So that could be that student's situation. But if I don't take the time to ask that child, you know, what's up? You're little, you know, you're getting a little short with me. What's going on? Well, Miss Davis, I'm hungry. Okay, well, here's a granola bar. Can we go on with class now? It doesn't mean that I have to write them up and send them to the office and they get suspended. That's not what that means. It means we fix the problem. And until we take the time to fix those problems and build those relationships, we will continue to see our students go through that, you know, the school to prison pipeline. I have so many students that, you know, that's been their experience, unfortunately. And you just don't know how heartbreaking that is to have a student. I had a student call me just last week, Miss Davis, I'm homeless. I'm like, you know, and he's one of my babies. I had him in middle school. He's a grown man now. He has felonies. He can't get a job. He doesn't have a car. We cannot continue to fail these kids. We have to come up with solutions.
No,
That is
you're right. That's so true. So the next, of course, we can't solve this problem this evening. As talented and educated as this panel is, but we can come up with some possible, let's just brainstorm some solutions. It's got to start somewhere. I feel that we, and you've already talked about some interventions at school. Those of you like Dr. Tiffany's situation, where she was able to step in and basically save a life and save a future. Aside from the interventions on the prison end, are there any reforms that should be in place once these kids are adults and they're in the system? I feel so sorry for the child that Attorney Michael mentioned that took the plea and went over to the adult system. Had he stayed in juvenile, I don't know what state it was in, but I know in most states, once you're released from the juvenile system, you don't have a record per se. But once you cross over into the adult system, a felony record, that sticks with you. And you have to pay lots and lots of money to get it purged. So what do we do? What can we do? What kinds of programs can be implemented in prison to open doors for people who are released?
If you don't mind, I'd like to just address that to start. The first thing I'll say is I don't know if it necessarily is that big of a difference between what we do on the school to prison pipeline and the after prison reentry issues. I think the biggest thing that we have to recognize is that our children and our adults, people of color, just overwhelmingly do not get the same opportunities as others. And one of the biggest opportunities that they don't get is just the opportunity to make a mistake and recover from it. And the policies and practices that you see with sentencing disparities and the policies of profiling and even at times harassment from once you have a brush with the law, you're labeled and kind of pigeonholed into a certain group or box. The same things happens in our schools. So they as children, a student that is not a student of color may get the opportunity to have a bad day and it not follow him the rest of his school year. But our children might not necessarily get that same opportunity. And it not only following the rest of the school year, but it now could end up being involvement with the police because we have uniformed police officers in the schools. So that to me would be one of the first things to do. Much like we talk about police reform in our neighborhoods, get it to the place where people that actually care about the community and know the people of the community, respect that community, are helping to police that community. I don't think that we need uniformed police officers in our school, especially when they're viewing our children as suspects and potential risks and threats, as opposed to being there to help facilitate their safety. It's fine if you're there to protect the children from outside influences, but if you're there to police juveniles, that absolutely is ridiculous. We don't, in no other place in society do you do that with armed law enforcement being called to deal with 6-year-olds. It just does not happen. And so when we've now ingrained that into them, a fear of police, when you're on the other side, you don't respect them in your community. You're taught to fear them. Most of them are walking around with PTSD from seeing some of the things that have already transpired. It's almost an expectation that eventually you're going to be in the system because what the last statistics was 1 in 3, 1 in 4 will be there at some point in time. And when you come out, it's an expectation that you're going to return. It's almost talked about as if it's a given. And so I think the next thing beyond getting rid of the sentencing disparities would be to realize that just because they made a mistake, there's an opportunity to recover. So what can we do with actually returning the Department of Corrections back to a place where they would receive some correction or some corrective steps and direction. It used to be a place where you could get education, where you could learn a marketable trade and skill before the mindset was polluted that the only thing we can do with quote unquote prisoners or people that have made mistakes is to punish them. You used to want to return citizen community in a productive fashion, and so you equip them with skills to do so and give them opportunity. We've intentionally removed all of those things, just like we removed vocational education and training from schools in a lot of areas as well. And I think those are two of the biggest things that we can do, because if they give them the opportunity to make a mistake, and then even if they do an opportunity to recover from it with some type of guidance and participation and dignity, I really believe that we will go a long way towards ending this cycle. And I'll yield for others at this time.
I especially like what you said about the vocational programs in prisons. I mean, when I was a case manager and I assigned inmates to jobs in prisons, way a long time ago when they were in place, it helped a lot with disciplinary issues inside the prisons. And they earned, it was a low wage, but they earned a little wage. I even knew of an inmate that saved enough money working in the canteen to buy his daughter a laptop computer so she could have that when she went to college. So the work is critical. And the skills, the people skills, because we didn't just put them to work. There were also programs that helped with employability, like a pre-employment training, as well as cognitive behavioral training. So the mental health piece matched with the vocational piece, and of course, it didn't save everybody, but those that took the tools up ended up doing much better when they got out.
Absolutely. I actually worked with that while I was in college and living in Columbia, South Carolina, the University of South Carolina, with the Richland County Literacy Council. I taught school at Broad River Correctional Center. I was an adult literacy counselor at Broad River. And those men, I mean, they were adults, but these were adult men that has trouble reading, and we essentially are starting from scratch. Everything from hooked on phonics to recognizing vowel sounds, to give them opportunities that they might not have necessarily had. And then once they connected to it, they got other opportunities within the prison. They got other opportunities or felt more comfortable and positive about looking to go home when their time came, because they had something that they could hold on to. and everybody just wants a chance. And that's something that I will never understand why that was taken away. And on the political side, why the rhetoric is always about, punishing and stamping out these people as if, they're not citizens, they're not human beings that have made a mistake. But for the grace of God, we all could find ourselves on our worst day in that same type of situation. And there's no reason why we shouldn't give them opportunities to have those type of programs again.
One of the things I think we're lacking, especially in our communities, is investment. We're so focused now on working towards investment that our investment that we are doing are going towards those things that are designed, or at least we think they're designed to bring us a large return, to a fast return, and three, a repeated return. So we're invested into things like Forex and a lot of those different programs, some of the pyramid things or whatever. Not that anything's wrong with them, they're good. But what we're not doing is pooling our funds together and starting post incarceration programs. We
Yeah.
Some of them, I know some people that have the idea, they just don't have the startup. They don't have the initial funds it takes to rent a place, to renovate it, to get it with proper rooms and security and cameras that's going to be needed and things like that. And then the places that do get started up, most of them are started up by our lighter complected brethren, and even though they have promises of doing things, they end up being basically a low class hotel where the people come and sleep and get monitored. They sign in, sign out. They may have a class to go to per week or something like that for counseling or something like that, because that's what's required of their release conditions. But other than that, they don't have the training. They don't really have a strong focus a lot of times towards vocational avenues. And when they do, it's usually on kickback that they're getting their friends things to get some cheap labor at construction sites and things like that. And it's not us that's getting them. And so we're as they say, last hired, first fired, and things like that. And so we got to convince those who have, and I'm not condemning, my athletes and entertainers and a lot of those who do have, mega bucks to invest, but we do have to somehow get their ear and get them to help with some of those people who do have these ideas to infuse some money in it that may not bring a return in the first year or two, but probably will bring a return because the clientele is sure. And if the state or counties or whatever are the ones that's paying, the money's going to be sure. So it's just a matter of getting there, trying to get the program structured right, and getting the capital investment into it. That's on one end. On the other end, one of the things that needs to be done also is to help some of these parents in elementary school understand true parenting. I've heard too many parents who believe that because they can say this one's mine, that they know how to parent. And just because you can say this one's mine, I gave birth to this one, doesn't make you super parent. But it's hard to convince them of that. And so you get stuff like what I've had to deal with and taking my daughter to her elementary school over the last couple of years. Sometimes we get there a little late, and you have to go and sign them in. And other parents are doing the same thing. And there's a couple of them that you know, I just feel for the kids because I'm walking behind these parents taking their kid in and they reek of weed. You know, 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, and they reek of weed. So strong that I'm like, well, no wonder this kid is probably going to be one of these that hit that pipeline, because they're not going to be able to focus. They're walking in with a contact. You know, sure, the body may be more used to it or something, but there's still, it throws them off. It throws the child off. It throws the class off. It throws the whole learning situation off. And so they become a victim to the system like that. And then the next thing you know, they get put into the alternative schools, which do not, which are, you know, basically daycares, because they have to find a school for the child to go to. And they give them just enough work to say they did work, but never enough work to keep them on grade level and to process them through so that they can take the end of year grade level exams and pass them.
I would also say, I know other panels will jump in, but I would also say we no longer in our schools and in dealing with these parents or even with adults in the prison system. People don't have conflict resolution. They don't know how to properly resolve problems and issues, deal with anger management. I heard Reverend Hughes say earlier, process trauma, all the things that it takes to be you know, productive in today's society, in dealing with some of the challenges that you'll face when you don't know how to resolve problems or conflicts. If the only way that you see issues solved is through violence, then most likely you're going to respond with violence to resolve your issues, whether you're a fifth grader or if you're 5 years out of high school and you're an adult and you get into a conflict in the Walmart parking lot, you do what you're familiar with. And if we don't teach our young people how to resolve, how to handle and process their anger and how to resolve conflict properly and actually reason one with another, use their words to reason, I think we are also fighting an uphill battle, because they don't know how to deal with the embarrassment of having the parents show up and being addicted or being embarrassing to them. They want to hide. Sometimes they don't want to come to school because they don't have the same clothing and things that others do, and all of the things that go into that. And if we were just able to teach them how to resolve those, handle those issues as children, then they'll be much more impactful and effective adults.
I would also just say, and it's tough, when we're talking about solutions, I think unfortunately, as a community, we don't necessarily reach back anymore, right? So I know I stand on the shoulders of some amazing people, and I am where I am because they reached back, right? Because I wasn't the typical kid that should be where I am right now. And I think Dr. Hollis talked about her principal and counselor that decided to step up and reach back. And I know that we are juggling a ton of different things, in particular as folks of color in the professional worlds that we navigate. We are code switching, we are life switching, we are doing all types of things, making sure that we are able to operate within the very different worlds that we have to operate in. But I think sometimes we have to make sure that we are reaching back and helping folks and recognizing that not everyone comes to situations with the same set of skills. So when I think about some of my parents that come in smelling like whatever, I try to not demean them for that, but have a conversation with them about it. And I think that that is a part of what our school does differently, is that we are not only creating a school, we're trying to create a community. And so understanding what happens at home and things of that nature, but understanding how that then looks when you bring that into the school. And I think we just have to start having really real and clear conversations with people and not demeaning conversations, and coming from a standpoint of grace and maybe they don't know, or maybe they need a little bit more help. But then also just whatever your lane is. So my lane is not prison reform. So I probably wouldn't be good with working with someone who's just got out of prison. But what I am good at is working with students and parents and teaching them how to advocate for themselves. And so I think we all need to, and it's tough as African Americans, as Black folks, as Black and brown people, because we juggle so much. Now we're told like we got to juggle what we're doing, and we got to go back and pull some more folks up. But I think we've lost that. And so I think the solution is having these conversations and then tapping your friend to say, hey, I know you're really good at accounting. I'm starting something at the church where I'm helping mothers learn how to balance their checkbooks or whatever. Can you come and speak to them? We've got to start doing that, because no one can save us, our students, our schools, our communities, but us. And we keep waiting on other folks. We keep waiting on policies and senators and whatever. But we have got to start some grassroots community type work at whatever skill we're good at, whatever your lane is.
That's good. So it looks like change is going to happen one community at a time, basically. Kind of like old school, like back in the days, civil rights. It was one community at a time. You know, when it started, it wasn't nationwide. It started with one issue, one group of people at a time. And we're in this new society where it's a get it done yesterday society, but we have problems that are systemic, which means they've been with us for as long as we've been here, for a couple centuries now. So we can't solve it overnight, but we can talk to our neighbors, and we can educate from our churches, and we can pass on whatever knowledge, like you said, Ms. Melissa, in your lane, from your lane. Yeah.
Well, I beg to differ just a little bit. I think we do it, we can't do it a community at a time. We have to do it one person at a time. We have to go back to the old each one reach one concept. And if we can get one and get that one to change or do another, it ends up being the multiple system that we talk about in the Bible. One can chase 1,000 and two can put 10,000 to flight. But we only going to be able to do that if we can grab this one. You know, it's the community concept is right, but you know, the only way we're going to build that community is to start with one and reframe with that one what community looks like, because so many don't even have a concept of that anymore.
Anybody have a response?
So my initial response would be, how long is that gonna take? Like, if and y'all will get to know me on this panel. I'm very transparent, but I'm like, I get it. Like, I understand what you're saying, but like, I think I'm going back to being in education and having a classroom of children. So I have to model the correct behavior. And by modeling the correct behavior, whether I'm with a whole classroom of students, one student, or if I'm meeting with a parent, I feel that I'm still making an impact, and it's not just on one person. So I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I guess I'm kind of going back to Lorna. This is an immediate need, and it needs to happen. It does need to happen now. So if I only focus on one person, it's going to be a long time coming.
But see, you're missing the multiplication effect. You're the one.
Well, yeah, it's like a trickle down effect.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
the one.
Yeah, so I understand it from that perspective.
Yeah,
I was
there
thinking
you go.
okay, am I just one person? I'm just touching one person. But yeah, I get it. So it's a trickle down effect. Okay, just checking.
And then don't sleep on national platforms as well from our politicians. We can affect policies as much as we can with our vote. Some of you guys most likely need to start running for offices. So, oh my gosh, Reverend Hughes. Well, I won't get into that, but but yeah, we need to show our faces not only at the polls but in the offices themselves,
Right.
and affect some policy changes from that end. So we're attaching it from two different directions.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you one of the things that I found that would make a huge impact. Filling out a job application really should not be a point of anxiety for a returning citizen. And just the fact that you're applying for a job sweeping the floor and they make you give a full disclosure details statement about your past trouble or those kinds of things. I just think it's ridiculous. And so there's several states that have had issues on the ballots about whether to remove that box of are you a former felon from those job applications and from certain others state and federal benefit services. That would be a huge start just so that we don't take people's dignity away just to try to fill out a job application and have to explain their situation over and over and over again to people that have already made up their minds about them anyway. We don't do that to people that are recovering from illness. HIPAA would stop that. We don't do that from people that are, education-wise, then there's privacy reasons that would stop that. But when it comes to felons or what we would say are former felons, we do that and cause it to be an issue. When we see that some of those offenses that people were arrested for, someone that looked a little differently from them could have done the same thing and would not have even been arrested, would have just been talked to and sent home. And so it really should be that would be a huge start that we can handle at the ballot boxes, as well as returning voters' rights and those kinds of things that would just be a lot more simpler to deal with if we can just treat people with dignity instead of continuing to oppress them after they serve their time.
Oh man, you reminded me of another war story. I like my stories, but I had a client a couple of years ago who had come through, they were roadies, they traveled around concerts and stuff like that. And they made money selling personal effects at concerts. So in Nashville, they got arrested for some of these personal effects, because kids were falling out from huffing. It was a $115 fine. But when they got to Knoxville and there was a concert and something happened and one of the guys got arrested for, selling that sniffing stuff, they wanted to throw the book at him. I mean, charge him with a serious felony, would not set bail and everything, since he was from New York. And so, it ended up being a whole big thing. He ended up having to pay $15,000 and spent about, I think it was about 9 months he spent, waiting pre-trial, just trying to get somewhere, because we were trying to get it knocked down to what the other rest of the state would have done for this same type of crime, so to speak, whatever. But no, we had some people here who wanted to make an example out of these guys from up north coming down here and trying to turn our good kids upside down, as they called it. So, it was a big deal. But what could I do except try to help my client out? If I couldn't make them do what Nashville did, they wouldn't do it.
Mhm. Okay, I just wanted to let everybody know we have about 10 more minutes, and we want to be mindful of ending right at 9 o'clock so that people who want to watch the vice presidential debate can watch it. So, actually, I think we have, it looks like 8 minutes. So does anybody have any other, just basically closing comments?
I just wanted to mention the link that I posted. Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina, won a second chance grant. So it provides programming for those who are going back and doing reentry programs, as Reverend Cleage spoke about. And so they are partnering with community organizations. They're partnering with churches. They're partnering with the workforce investment. Partnering with a lot of people in the community in Orangeburg, but also allowing those inmates to take classes at their university. So they're doing a lot of things to not only change the narrative, but to also provide those opportunities that Reverend Clee was speaking of earlier. So Claflin University is making some strides in terms of that, the reentry and providing those opportunities for those who otherwise wouldn't have access to those opportunities. And they're also doing employment skills as well, Reverend Clee. So hopefully they'll help with those application skills and employability skills. And that'll give a lot of our inmates that boost of confidence that was taken away from many of them who went to jail for menial crimes or who took the plea, as many of you were speaking of earlier. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Dr. Hollis. That's great information. No, that's an awesome effort they're doing. Anybody else?
Well, I would like to say thank you for the invitation. I appreciated being here and being on the panel. And thank you for at least having this situation that we can start to break the ice. Of course, this is a multifaceted, multi-level conversation that we need to have and keep having. But it is definitely a situation that we need to break on so many levels. Prison reform, breaking the pipeline, and definitely doing it from a young age, trying to capture these young guys who often don't have an expectation of getting to the age of any of us. You know, they just don't even dream like that anymore. Some of them their dream is to make it to 18.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to work on all of this, changing that narrative too.
Yes.
Thank you, Vicki, for putting this together. I think it was very cool to hear other people's perspective, and definitely to hear about the work that everyone is doing in their lane to be of benefit to our community. So just kudos to all you continue to push forward and be of benefit to our community, because I'm just a firm believer that it starts with us. So thank you. And thank you, Vicki, for inviting me.
Guys, I would like to also add one of the things that we do. I work with a nonprofit called Pre for Evergreen, where we teach green skills initiatives, green jobs trainings to returning citizens, and everything from first-time felons to veterans or those that may even have disabilities. But our main population focus is returning citizens. And being an environmental engineer by trade, I got involved with this organization and the visionaries behind it to help give people green jobs like solar energy installation, recycling of plastics and crumb rubber, those types of materials. And I teach them how to have marketable skills like driving forklifts and working in the industrial environment. And they can take these skills and employ them or use them anywhere once they've learned them from there. We launched in Charlotte, North Carolina, and from there have branched on to New Jersey, Patterson, New Jersey, currently where the operation is going on, which essentially covers everything from job training to helping with things like we talked about earlier, conflict resolution, teaching money management, and life skills. And so many of those kinds of programs are needed. We always have a problem with resources. That's why, we don't have a brick and mortar location in Charlotte right now. But the more we can identify and locate opportunities like what Dr. Hollis posted earlier, the more we'll be able to bring those kinds of programs around the country, not just in Charlotte and Patterson. So I'll post a link in the chat and in the Facebook log as well, so you can check out Pre-Proof Evergreen when you have an opportunity.
Okay, great. Okay, anyone else? We have about 3 minutes.
Well, I'll just quickly kind of put my 2 cents in. So I know earlier I kind of spoke from an educator's perspective, but from a counselor perspective, I do think that it's important that we, what is the word I'm looking for? So there's times when we're broken, and I believe that there's opportunity to heal. So even someone who has made a mistake according to what the system says, we can bounce back from that. And I believe that even starting in elementary, it's important to shape and mold our kids, our brown babies, to know that they are valued, that their life matters, that they can be so much more than what the world just wants to put them in this little box, and we can go so much further. So that's kind of just where I am emotionally. I think we just need to create those programs that allow kids to learn how to express themselves appropriately, learn the skills and the tools to stay emotionally grounded and to know that they can make good, sound decisions. And again, even if we mess up, we can fix that.
Amen.
Yes. Let's see. I think we've heard from everybody. Closing remarks other than Lorna. I'm not sure if I don't think you said any closing remarks.
No, I just thank you everybody for taking time out to participate. And like I said earlier, we can't solve this in one night, but you've opened up good discussions. We have a lot to think about, and I know I'm going to be having conversations with the groups of people that I'm associated with, and I appreciate you guys, and thank you, Vicki, for including me. I really appreciate it. And I just love your ministry of information and sharing. You always try to make the world better wherever you are, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. So we have about 1 minute or so. So I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you viewers for watching. If you have not shared already, please share this so that people can hear it. You've heard some awesome, amazing, insightful things tonight. People need to hear what these people on here tonight had to say. Thank you to my tech person, my event specialist, Crystal Speed. She's usually behind the scenes. She can hear me, but you can't see her. Thank you to my co-moderator tonight, Lorna Brown Ray. And I want to thank, my panelists for their support, guest panelists. Thank you so much. You all have been amazing, and I'll be reaching out to each of you all individually after the debate or tomorrow. Thank you. And, you all have said so many things tonight, and I'm hoping that we could have you all back. It would be great if we could do a part 2 of this, if you all are available. The next one is Wednesday night, October 21st. So, and it would be from 8:30 to 10 p.m. So again, I'll be reaching out to all of you all individually. Thank you all viewers for watching tonight. Again, thank you for everyone who participated in this insightful, enlightening conversation. Hope you all will watch the vice presidential debate. Again, thank you for everything. Good night.